So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really lovely to have you with me here today, and I'm so grateful that you've actually been able to spend an hour with me. Just if one of you can answer the question, can you hear me? Can you see the screen? Is everything working? That would be fantastic. So you answer it in the question box and just tell me yes, that it's all okay. So I can then continue with the webinar. Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate your help. So welcome. I mean, what an incredibly, I suppose, opportune discussion for us to be having today. When I look at the world around us, when we all look at the world around us and what's going on, it's pretty crucial. And I think it would be really very easy to become quite distressed or quite despondent. And so this particular webinar, today, is all about you as either a team leader or as a person or as a leader about what can we actually do. But obviously, in some of the slides, the focus is around leadership. So just bear with me, and I will hope that you will actually have some opportunity to learn some things. Resilience is by far my favorite topic. I absolutely love this topic. I love the research around it. I love learning more about how people are resilient in times of adversity, what people do, how people think. And it's certainly one of my absolute best. So I'm really hoping that you can learn something today. Okay, so let's kick it off then and let's get moving. I think the question is that the world sure is struggling right now. We know that. You know, people are in a lot of pain. People are in a lot of grief. I read a Facebook posting last night. Oh, my gosh. It was, there were about 22 organizations, businesses, actually, not organizations as such, but businesses in the Wollongong Nowra area that have all gone bust. And I just thought that was unbelievably sad. You know, probably young or, you know, people who might have small businesses, all their life savings have gone into that, and where's it all gone? So I like to try and hold on to the belief that there's a reason for all of this, that this is happening because of something that we need to learn. But I think at times we may just wake up, well, I do, asking myself, oh my gosh, which way is up? You know, even though it's not hectic and people are running around and frenetic, it's still stressful. And I think that's a really important point. And I think, you know, it's great to say, oh, let's work from home. It'll be fantastic. But if you're living with kids who might be younger and there all the time, you know, they take all of your time. And you think to yourself, well, when does it all end? I'm a runner. And on Sunday morning, I was telling this to one of my friends. I went for a 45-minute run. And it was early, admittedly. So it was about 7:30, 7:45 on a Sunday morning. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I saw absolutely nobody, not one person in that 45 minutes. It was quite bizarre. And I thought to myself, it's almost like I'm on the moon living here on my own. It feels that way. So, you know, is it a bad hair day or which way are we going and which way is up? Just bear with me, those of you who know me well, because there's quite a lot of you on the line today, and there's some of the names I don't recognize, so I just have to introduce myself to you in terms of fair governance and good practice. So I've been actually somebody who's been dedicated to human development my whole life, so I won't stay here too long. I've lectured. I've done many, many different things. I've been working on 3 different continents, as a coach, a business owner, leadership consultant, doing lots of professional experience across 3 continents. I write for the local and international media, and I speak at regular conferences. So I think the only reason I do show you this slide is to a bit of an understanding as to why I'm actually running this webinar, because I think any webinar you run, you've got to have some credibility. So that's the stuff that I've been doing and absolutely love what I do. Fantastic job. These are some of the people with whom I work. Pretty proud of this one here, particularly the bottom picture. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is that these are a group of women who we implemented and empowering women in female leadership roles in the Department of Education to thrive. It was so fantastic to watch these women absolutely be blown out of the water and learn strategies and techniques to lead properly. So I'm pretty proud of that one. It's one of my real kind of smiles on my face moments. So we need to focus, obviously, not today on the coronavirus, because we all know what's basically going on. We understand the impact, or we should be understanding the impact on us and others. But what I really want to focus on is how to get through this and strategies to help our people move forward successfully. And the reason I actually put this slide up is because I really believe one of the things we need to focus on, particularly if we are leaders, is that, you know, people look up to us as leaders to help them. And one of the other webinars I ran a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the research that says that actually people don't leave organizations, they leave their leaders. In other words, they don't feel treated well or valued significantly by their leaders, and that's why they leave. And so let's focus in on what do we need to do ourselves, but what do we need to do to help those people who value and see us as their leaders to keep motivated and going? Because the role that you play in resilience, in terms of having resilience, and the role that you play in a crisis of any type becomes absolutely paramount as a leader, and to do it well and to do it right. So I guess the questions are, would you like to really understand what resilience is? It's an interesting question because so many people say resilient this, resilient that, and when I ask them, do they actually understand what it means, they not all are clear on what it means. So let's get a really good understanding of what it means. And would you like to have a suite of strategies to help you move through this difficult time? Because it is difficult, and I think we're all struggling in some way or the other. Would you like to be able to stay motivated and positive, not only for your people, but you're also leaders at home, for your family. And if your children and family see you as miserable and despondent, and you have reasons to be, but don't stay there. Go for a walk, go for a drive on your own and move on. But it's important that they see you as resilient, somebody who they can look up to and know that the future is secure because you're there. Would you like to have a highly performing team no matter what the situation? And I honestly believe that in situations like this, you are very, very critical in maintaining and sustaining a highly performing team, no matter what, threat or situation we're in. And lastly, would you like to learn about yourself and your team during a crisis like COVID-19? So let's talk then, what is this thing called resilience and how do we go about getting it? So let's just think a little bit more. The ability to bounce back in the face of adversity is the official definition of resilience. So the ability to bounce back no matter what happens, disasters, world wars, COVIDs, hurricanes, cyclones, even lesser things in terms of less global anyway, acrimonious divorces, separations. Those are very adverse conditions that many, many people live through. So what is this thing called resilience? It is the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity, or to bounce back slowly as you can over adversity. And I think this is what we need to be looking at. But I actually like the definition of resilience to be bouncing forward as opposed to bounce back. And I think in the first, definition, the ability to bounce back is really saying the same thing as bouncing forward. So if I was a guru of research and, the Williams Dictionary and Harvard Law Library, I would want to say in the books that it's the ability to bounce forward in the face of adversity. So you can see where I'm coming from in that situation. And really what the official definition then is this: the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. I put in such as the coronavirus, obviously, family and relationship problems, serious health issues, or workplace and financial stressors. So that's resilience. And really now, as I said just now, it's now the time to show how resilient we truly can be. Because what's interesting about this particular situation, and we know that it is unprecedented, is that there is nothing anybody can do to make it go away. I mean, obviously there's world plans like, social isolating, looking after your health. So there are things that we can do. But at the end of the day, it's a virus, I believe, that will only kind of be coming under arrest when we do X, Y, Z, and also when, it sort of runs its course. So what I'm saying is that this will not be the future. We will get over this. We are resilient enough to face this adversity, i.e. coronavirus, and some of us will do it better than others. Some of us won't do it well at all. Some of us will struggle on it. There's an example I'll give you. I was thinking about this the other day. My parents had a friend called Shirley. And Shirley, from 39 years of age, she was not yet 40. I'll never forget this because I remember her as a young child at that time. And she was, at 39, diagnosed with advancing sort of osteoporosis. And no matter what she did over the years, it just got worse and worse. So, her hands were all sort of claw-like. Her posture became all fetal, crunched over. It was so tragic. She eventually got into a wheelchair, couldn't get out, and she died at about 81. So from 39 to 81, this woman was in the most amazingly serious health issues, in constant pain. And yet, for her, I never saw anything that was sad. I never saw her cranky. I never saw her as if she was in pain, although she was on literally 20 painkillers a day and other forms of medication. But she was so resilient in the face of this adversity. And as I grew up, and as I still remember her now, she's passed on, obviously, she's always a shining example of how resilience is, no matter what. She got up every day. She, sort of encountered the day. She had a routine, and she dealt with whatever came her way. And that's resilience. And so as leaders, it is about, no matter what's happening in the workplace, no matter what's happening in the world, we have to show that we are resilient in every way, and that is about bouncing forward in the face of this adversity. And so I'm going to talk about that today. So there's been a lot of studies around resilience. Oh my gosh, so many. And the focus has been essentially on natural disasters, as I said, your hurricanes, your cyclones. Most of you will know that I spend a fair percentage of my life working overseas in Fiji, and I've been doing that for 10 years. And this little country with less than 1 million people is constantly battered by the weather. Seriously, Winston cyclone came through Fiji, and it just created billions and billions of dollars of destruction. Probably lasted 10, 15 minutes, if that. And most of Fijian villages were just wiped out. And no matter what they do, there are very resilient people that just have to keep rebuilding. Katrina, Cyclone Katrina, all of these things that we see all the time. Oh my gosh, I don't even have to tell you about resilience in terms of warfare. What is it that made some people survive Auschwitz and, those kind of most horrendous situations and still be able to live a fairly productive life when it ended? However, I think it's important to say that there are many, many soldiers who came back from the front, for example, particularly, let's say, in the Vietnam War. A very high percentage of them turned to drugs for, post-traumatic stress disorder. There was a lot of them that turned to alcoholism. And I think a large part of that was because as a society, we didn't welcome them. In fact, we vindicated the soldiers who came back because the Western world believed that we shouldn't have been part of that war. Well, fine, we may not have been, but the soldiers who came back weren't celebrated as heroes. And I think many of them had resilience, but the situation in which they had found themselves was absolutely overwhelming. And then, of course, we have mental health, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression. It's very difficult when I'm working with depressed people for them to understand what true resilience is. So it's all about teaching them tiny little strategies to adopt each and every day to become more resilient in their daily lives. And there's a lot of you on the line today, I can see. There's 25 of you sitting listening to me, and there would be at least a third of you on this line, so 8, who would be suffering or have suffered depression in the past. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Conditions threatening the world, well, there you go, good old coronavirus. But really the studies about resilience, and I love this because it says resilience is the power of one strong relationship as a key ingredient in the resilience of a person. In other words, a positive adaptive response in the face of significant adversity. So, for example, let's take youth centers where you've got youth workers. Very often youth are struggling with mental illness. They've got issues at home. It's a very trying time in life to be a adolescent, really. Social media, all over the place. A lot of young people harm themselves over the abuse over the social media or indeed suicide. So there's a lot of issues that youth go through. But what I always say, and when I did studies for a long, long time, sometimes, and here's an important thing I want you to write down if you've got a book and a pen. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, it's just one person in somebody's life that you can change their lives without you realizing it and be that one strong relationship for that person to hold on to. And you sometimes might not even realize that you're doing something like that. I mean, obviously a key thing is things like counseling. If you go to youth work, it's about one youth worker who just helps a child or a young person and helps them through adversity and moves them along the line of absolute depression and isolation towards connection, because I think it's all about connection and confidence and feeling as if they're part of something. And, as I say, youth workers, mental health workers, even counselors in schools, and you as leaders, if you are leaders, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's about helping people who might not have the strength that you have to cope with this stuff. And the tragedy about, or the value about being a leader at this time, is that you've got to be able to be on your game to help people around you and beneath you who you lead to be hopefully on their game, or at least help them through the game. So I'm going back about 2 years ago, an example, which I really thought just was amazing. I was on the train to go into the city, so I was going to some training, I think it was, and the train was pretty packed. But there was a young female who got on the train, and I instantly recognized her. She was a young female who I had done some training on a counselling course through Australian College of Applied Psychology. I was a lecturer there for a long time. So when she came on the train, I actually remembered her face, but I couldn't remember her name. But it was packed, so I thought, well, she didn't see me anyway. What was interesting, we got to Wynyard, and so many people were getting off, and she came to me. She was standing up. She came to me, and she said, Karen Walsh, I just want to thank you for changing my life. And I looked at her. I was quite sort of taken aback, and I said, what a beautiful thing to say. How did I do that? And she said to me, in a counseling class, I was going through a really hard divorce, and you spent 10 minutes with me after that class just helping me and giving me hope. And I think that's what resilience is about, ladies and gentlemen, hope, that there's going to be something at the end of it. And let's join and connect together so that we can ride through the storm, an immense world threat, and get to the other side. Now, the story I told is nothing about being, a great deal. But the point I'm making is that sometimes you can do something in somebody else's life without even realizing the impact that you make on others. And it's that connection that they have that is the difference to those that don't make the difference, if you get what I'm meaning. So, resilience and managing stress. It's a very, very key relationship. I have spoken about this, I think, to death. There is a very strong collaboration between resilience and stress, and there are eons and eons of research around this. The better able you are to manage your stress, and stress comes in different forms, so it can be all of us have, issues. And the interesting thing about stress, ladies and gentlemen, is that what stresses you may not stress me. So a lot of people say, well, for example, I'll tell you an example right now. A friend of mine is losing a client who's a 91-year-old woman. So she is in healthcare, and she phoned me this morning, and she said to me, my team are so distressed about this because this person is passing. And I said, how long is this person? How old? And she said, she's 92. And I said, I can appreciate that they would see it sad, i.e. stressful. But what I want you to tell them is to actually not see it as stressful, but see it as wonderful opportunity for her to pass over to another life. Because at night, the age she is, she can't move, she can't see, she can't eat, and that's not helpful. That's not happy living. And she said, I hadn't thought about it like that. And I said, well, tell your people that. So I don't see that as stress. I see that as really a godsend in many ways. So this webinar is not about managing stress, but I am making the connection between the better you are able to manage stress, the research says, the more resilient you tend to become. So I think that's a very, very important point, because then it means that we need to make sure that we actually are managing our stress as perfectly as we can, or as best we can, to become more resilient. And I'll explain what I mean now. So because people who manage stress well and bounce forward in the face of adversities, which is what I'm just saying to you around the collection or the collaboration between both, they tend to listen to this live longer. So you manage your stress better, you are more resilient, you deal with life that comes to you in an adverse way, and you tend to live longer. You tend to be healthier, which I think is so interesting. And the research says you have more satisfying relationships, both at work and at home. Why? Because you have a grip of yourself. You might be stressed at times. Heaven forbid you are a human being. But what it does mean is that when you feel stressful or agitated, you manage it well. You go for a walk, you grab a coffee, although some people might say, well, that gives me stress. Okay, grab a glass of water. So work out strategies for you as an individual that will help you manage your stress. Because people, particularly if you're in a leadership position, are looking at you for the guidance in this difficult time to show them the path, because they believe in you and they have hope in you and they trust you. And therefore, you tend to have more satisfying relationships with them. It's actually a very, very interesting connection between these two. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't be stressed at times. Of course you will. But it's all about how you manage your stress. That's what's the critical point here. They tend to be more successful financially. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is not my research. This is the official research sent out by World Health Organizations, similar organizations that have done research around managing stress and resilience. Now, this particular slide, I want to talk to you about human ways of thinking. We know, again, from the research that the more optimistic you are, i.e. your glass is half full or overflowing with hope, optimism, belief in the future, that it'll all work out, versus pessimism. I'm just going to take a sip of water, please. Thank you. Versus pessimism, which is the way of looking at life that is glass half full or a quarter full. So people who have a pessimistic way of thinking tend to be people who expect things not to work, who expect things to be at their worst. They have challenging scripts in their head that say to them that it's a more cautious way of thinking and ultimately behaving and ultimately living. And I don't know, there's a lot of you, some more of you have joined us, and so we're close to 30 on the line. How many of you would say that you tend to be more pessimistic than optimistic in thinking? So if you just shoot me which is your more dominant, I obviously won't say your name, but just tell me, is it more, type up the word optimistic or pessimistic. And you might say, well, I don't know, it depends on the situation. Okay, but then which is your more dominant? So let me ask you first, Steve, if you wouldn't mind. Okay, so Steve, you say you tend to be more optimistic. And I'm only saying Steve because you were the one who came on first. I have somebody saying you try to be optimistic, but often the pessimism can take over. It's a very interesting point then. So when the pessimistic takes over, my question to you is why? What is it that's happening for you in any situation that makes you err on the side of pessimism? Because what we know is that the more pessimistic you are, the more difficult life is, the more stressful you seem to see life as, because that's how you look at it, and therefore you tend to be less resilient. So it's a very important point. I see more of you are optimistic, which is fabulous. Oh my gosh, that is so fabulous. And for those of you who answered the question, which there are 9, I can see all of you actually are in leadership roles because I know who you are. Therefore, which is a really good thing, we need to be optimistic in everything that we do, ladies and gentlemen, because if we don't, particularly in leadership roles, don't expect your people to be optimistic if you're not. So even if you do tend to be pessimistic, the question is, and this is obviously not a therapy session, but the question is I would like you to ask yourself is, maybe sort of take a notebook and a pen and really kind of notice when you swing into pessimistic mode. What is it? What are the triggers? What are the situations? Because the more you have greater self-insight, the more you understand yourself better, the more we are able to say, okay, let me try and reword that pessimistic thinking around that particular stressor so that I can move it into a more optimistic way of thinking. What's a quick example? A personal example might be, oh my gosh, I look so fat in this dress. Pessimistic. And you could say optimistic, okay, I look a little overweight. I could wear a scarf around, my sort of neck and let it flow down onto my tummy area. It's a great dress. It does work well with a scarf. And I actually look quite good in this, even though I know I have to lose weight. So let me look at the weight loss program over the next 6 months. So can you see the difference in between pessimism and optimism? Optimism is always looking for solutions, working with others to come up with ways to move forward, as opposed to kind of ruminating on that this doesn't work, this will never work, I don't try it because I know it won't work. Those kind of thinking thoughts, the pessimistic, is not what resilient thinking is. Resilient thinking is optimistic thinking. Life is a perception, and this is a very important point. We all see it differently. And one of the key things, I think, particularly in leadership, is understanding that you might have a team where they see things differently. And if they do, allow them to have a talk about how they see things. Because even if they see something differently to the way you see something, it doesn't mean that you're always right. Now, when we talk about also human ways of thinking, you've got a lot of staff, obviously, who are at home because that's where they're told to be. I think the important thing that we need to do as leaders is to keep them motivated, to keep them engaged in the workplace, to keep them keeping on moving forward, even though they are at home. And it was really interesting. A couple of my friends said, "Oh, how are you, beauty? I can work from home." Those same friends are saying, "Oh my God, the kids are driving me crazy. I've done all the chores. Now what?" So they're getting into the boredom phase. And the boredom phase is never good, no matter where we are in life or what stage. So what is stressful to one person may be nothing more than just a mere annoyance to another. So we see life differently. The real question is, I think if I had my 3 children here, they would be absolutely killing themselves laughing at this slide. I've been teaching them for their whole lives, when things go wrong, I don't want you to ask me what to do. I don't want you to be pessimistic. I want you to be optimistic and ask this question: how can I recover? So what is it that I need to do to make sure that I can move forward and change the situation that I'm facing into a more positive way of thinking, or deal with it in a way that gives me more options, as opposed to be stuck in a hole whinging about things not working. If you can learn to adopt this thinking throughout your entire life, no matter what stage of life, no matter what position you're in, that's what I'm after. Acknowledge, okay, this is what's happening. So whether it's a really horrible relationship breakdown, whether it's a fight with your mother-in-law, whether it's, not getting along with your team members or your manager who you think is an absolute, big bad boss, whatever it is, acknowledge it. Don't keep your emotions down. Take out an A4 piece of paper and write down what's going on. And I always say this: the more you can see what's going on, as opposed to just going round and round and round in your head, which will drive you crazy, by the way, acknowledge where we're at. Always challenge your life scripts, okay? And that's really, really important. Remember the dress example: I'm so fat, I look awful. Challenge that. Say, no, hold on a moment. Let me reframe that thinking. Let me challenge that script. So when we talk about life scripts are those ways of thinking that we have picked up from the first, generally Freud would say, 7 years of our lives. So what we were taught as children, what was said to us as children, not always, of course, ladies and gentlemen, no ways, not always. But if a child is raised in a very positive way, and they're not reprimanded all the time, they're encouraged to be autonomous, they're encouraged to go out and, engage with life, they're encouraged to learn how to recover, they tend to be more optimistic, say the studies. But that doesn't mean if you weren't that way as a child, you can't learn it. Of course you can learn it. This is part of what I'm doing with you today. Challenge what you're thinking about. Think optimistically about life and challenges you face. So here we sit. We sit with coronavirus. And we sit and we think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I've done everything. I don't know if I can connect with my team. This is where technology obviously is fantastic. You can have team meetings, virtual training, etc. But this is where we're at. So the real question here is, what can I do to keep myself really powered on in this space? So here's something to think about. We are in a largely face-to-face training space. We work in Africa, we work in Fiji, we work in Australia. So face-to-face means we are with you, right? So my team and I went to bed 3 weeks ago on a Thursday and woke up on the Friday, and we don't have a business. Why? Because how do we do training like we used to face-to-face? It's gone. So I remember sitting there thinking, oh, well, that's just fantastic. Lifelong work just gone. Obviously, when it comes back or when the global virus thing dies down, we could pick up. We could pick up, but 4 months in the industry in which we operate is a long time. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's really unfortunate. What can I do? Okay, we could do more online learning. So we're starting to do online training packages to organizations. We could do more webinars, which is what we're doing right now. We could do more executive coaching, which is what we're doing. One of the things I do is I said I'm a runner. I'm doing more exercise because I've got more time. I'm really having a look at the way that I eat in the diet so that I start thinking to myself, and I'm really, really very firm on this, and I would like you to be most firm on this. Your health is everything. So if your health isn't good, have a look now at what you can do to improve it. If you're overweight, what are you going to do right now in this time of home, supposedly, to really look at that issue? The point that I'm making is we can't change what the coronavirus is. We cannot change social distancing, but we can use this time to work out how we can recover in the most optimistic and helpful ways. That's what that is about. The think can do, not cannot do. There are things that you cannot do. Of course, you cannot go and have, you cannot go and have lunch with a friend in the restaurant. How frustrating. We can't run our, training programs. How mortifying. We can't go out with our friends for a really great movie and a dinner after that. We can't. But what can we do? Well, we could actually cook at home and maybe, I don't know, but depends on the social isolation. We can have our friends over, or if we can't do that, or family, then we cook at home for our own family and we watch a movie ourselves on Netflix or Stan. No, it's not as good, but it's still that can-do attitude. The other thing I'm loving about what I'm seeing going around me is that, the world is in the most amazing, I see the world as the most amazingly frenetic, fast-paced, incredibly stressful place. I'm talking pre-corona, where there's so many cars on the road, people are impatient, and people are, it's just so unbelievably frenetic and chaos. And I love that it seems to be calmer. That's a great outcome for this coronavirus for me. Just one thing at a time. I don't want to do 10 zillion things at a time. I want to do one thing at a time. And what I do of an evening or first thing in the morning is I make a list of the things I would like to do that day. And so I go through them and I tick it off, tick it off, tick it off. Absolutely the J personality type for those of you who were on my webinar last week. But one thing at a time. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do. You could be talking to your team once a week because you've got more time now as opposed to once a month. You could hold meetings with them. You could be talking to them every day if that's what you like because you've got more time. There's many, many things you can do. The point is, what are you doing? And just constantly ask yourself this question, how can I recover? So when we talk about, what is building resilience and how do you do this? I think we need to adapt. The fact is that we've had to adapt. We're at home and you're at home and everybody's at home. So we've had to adapt to more technology. We've had to adapt to, Zoom and Go Business, Skype and all of these platforms. We have to adapt to the fact that we're not doing work in the same way that we used to. We have to adapt to the fact that we have to connect with people differently. We have to adapt to the fact that the world has changed. I don't think it'll ever be the same as it was. And those people who resist change and who really are angry about this and pissed off about that, I'm saying you're wasting your time. You know why? Because no emotion or frustration you have, guys, is going to change anything. The only thing that you can change is your attitude to what's going on and work out how to live within that change and do it well and adapt. And those are people who are more resilient and healthier and happy and all of those things. You know, this is something I mention every time I speak, whether I'm in a conference I'm speaking at, whether I'm overseas speaking, whether I'm in Australia. It matters not where I am. I talk about our health. And I say this once and I say this 1,000 times. So the two countries where I work most would be Australia and Fiji. And depending on the year, I work more there or here or here or there. One of the things I'm going to say, which might be a bit scary, is that both nations are abominably bad at their health. So you might say, oh, come on, Karen, that's not true. I think the most important thing is that, you know, we need to, Australians, actually, that's not true. Australians are actually people who exercise a lot. Australians, people who actually, you know, look after their health. They eat well. They're not overweight, etc. Well, let me put you in the picture. Probably about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I was reading some research, because I'm always reading research, because obviously it forms the work that I do, right? And the research said that Australians are, you ready for this, the most obese nation in the world right now. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, we are the most obese, i.e. fattest, whichever way you want to interpret it, nation in the world today, including our children. Dear God, including our children. We have a reputation for being one of the biggest abusers of alcohol, and we are seen as an alcohol drinking nation around the world. And the fact to drink alcohol is not the problem. It's how we behave when we drink alcohol, or, you know, the amount that we drink. So I've got a friend of mine who's going through a really sad situation at home at the moment, and she's been drinking probably a bottle and a half of wine a day for the last 2-3 months. And I said to her, this is absolutely no good. This is really sick. You're going to get sick. So the reason without staying here too long is look after your health. Look after your weight. Look after how much you drink if you do. 2 standard drinks, 8 glasses of water, 8 hours of sleep, eat really well. So look after our health, because a key thing with our health is that if we lose our health, we have nothing. So if you've got your pen and you've got your notebook, you write that down for me. And here it goes. Health is all. Without health, all is nothing. Without our health, we have nothing. So health has to be your absolute priority each and every day. And Jane, I absolutely do agree with you. To be grateful that everything has sort of been slowed down and pared back, because I think it's just chaotic. So now's the time to really think about how we're living and really think about, are we doing, you know, our health a favor or not? If you smoke, well, I don't even need to tell you about that. I think Brazilian people expect life to offer good things. They see the good things in life. Yesterday, for example, I put some fruit on the ground outside in my garden, and these 2 beautiful lorikeets came and ate the food. And I sat there for about 20 minutes just watching them. And it was just beautiful to appreciate nature and how fantastic it is. Look for solutions to problems when things go wrong. Don't sit in the problem. Don't sit in your depression. Get out there and look for ways to solve the problem, people to connect with, things to do to address the issues. Check your self-talk. Again, I say, and always move from negative to positive. Live a balanced life. So if you've got a piece of paper and a pen, I want you to draw a circle. Some of you may know this because I've done this with you before, but some of you may not. Draw a circle and draw 4 equal slices, like a pie, if you like, or a pizza with 4 equal quarters. And in the bottom left quarter, I want you to write the word mental. In the bottom right corner, I want you to write the word physical. In the top right corner, I want you to write the words social-emotional. And in the top left corner, I want you to write the word spiritual. You got it? Okay, so Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, this is his model, and I love his work. He says that human beings live in 4 different areas of their lives. Those 4 I've just given you, right? And what he says is that to live a balanced life, to really live well, to really, get the most out of this time called life. You spend equal time keeping your mental agility going. So things like Scrabble, Sudoku, Rubik's Cube, learning a language, puzzles, decisions. All of those things is keeping your brain active. And physical, I don't have to bore you. You know what physical is. So it's regular exercise 3 times a week. Not a stroll, get that cardiovascular heat up. Things like, watch your diet. If you eat crap all the time and you're onto McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken every day, watch out. You're going to get high cholesterol and have a heart attack. Of course, not necessarily, but you get where I'm coming from. So drink more water, drink less alcohol, sleep 8 hours a night. You know all of this. The social emotional slice of the pie is all about how we have connections. Ladies and gentlemen, to be resilient, we need connections. We need people to whom we can connect, people with whom we can talk, organizations with whom we can, identify, so that we are not feeling as if we're walking on the moon on our own. So social emotional is about connections, our families, our loved ones, our children. How do we, work in that particular slice? Do we have great relationships? Do we work well with our children and our teams? Do we spend time fostering relationships with our people or with our leaders? That's where that particular aspect of life comes in, and it's all about connections. And initially, the very last one on the top left being spiritual, Covey initially had that as religious, and then he changed it to spiritual because not everybody's religious. But spiritual is around, do you think about what you're doing, like that old reflective practice, or do you just keep on doing what you're doing because you've always done what you do, so you keep on doing what you've always done? And that doesn't mean that you're doing it well. That doesn't mean that you're doing it effectively. So if the spiritual is around really thinking about how you're living, taking the time out to meditate, to look at me, taking the time out to connect with nature, play with your animals, look at the birds, gratitude, humility, all of those things to really have that quieter inner space that you need to just go into yourself, to reflect on life and how you are living it, and to connect with a higher power if that's what you do, or, your faith-based activities. Now, he says, I'll move on from here, but he says that resilient people, i.e. highly effective people, because you can't be a highly effective people and not resilient, generally they go together, those people spend at least 1 hour in each of those pie slices every day. In other words, every day you're in the cognitive space, which we are because we're at work and we're leading teams and we're raising families, so we're thinking about things. Do we spend a lot of time in our physical space? No, actually, Australians do not. We do not. We are not an exercising nation. We like to watch it, sport, footy, etc. But as a nation, we are not highly exercising. So if you're not spending an hour a day, or at least they say 30 to 40 minutes 3 times a week, exercising, then you're not actually buoyant in your physical space or your physical slice. Are you connecting with your parents and your in-laws and your children? Are your relationships good? And if they are, fantastic. If they're not, there you are. How can I recover? What am I going to do about them? And are you spending every single day, even if it's 5-10 minutes? It should be an hour. We might not always have that time for you. I am so selfish for me. My kids say, are you always going to, have your nails done? Or are you always going for a massage? Absolutely, because I think, and this is what I want you to think, is that without doubt you are the most important person in your world. Because if you're not living a balanced life, your children aren't either. And I know many mothers, and I'm not suggesting fathers don't do this, but mothers do anything and everything. We cook, we clean, we taxi, we take them to things, we fetch them from things. We help them with their homework. It's exhausting. But I still find time to look after me. So there you go. You've got the Covey model of the slices of the pie, and are you living well? Okay, expect and accept things that go wrong, because life is about that. No matter where I am, I always say, so who of you, in the room lives a perfect life? Who of you has a fantastic life free from difficulty and adversity? And I think every single solitary training I have done over the last 25 years, I have never met one person in any single training forum or educational objective I was doing or giving that has said, yep, my life is absolutely cool, never had a problem, never had relationship difficulties, because life is like that. things will go wrong. Your car will break down. Your relationship might struggle at times. Your children might be, drinking too much. You may be working with a leader you don't like. Things will go wrong because we don't live the perfect life. But it's about what are we going to do when things do go wrong? How can I recover? The resilient thinking. Because that's what it's about. It's as opposed to, as I said earlier, shrinking back into a pool of despair, or avoiding other people, or becoming socially isolated and never seeing your friends, etc., etc. Think about, rather get out that A4 piece of paper and actually what are the options I have to do to accept that these things are happening, and how can I actually change them? Or if I can't change them, how can I get through them in the most positive way? And we know from eons of research, goals, I'm telling you, the people who have goals and have them written down with an action plan of what you're going to do when and how, etc., are those people who tend to be highly successful. Many people walk around with goals in their heads. They tell me, oh, yeah, Karen, I've got great goals, no worries. And I say, well, show me your goals. Oh, I haven't written them down. Those are not goals, ladies and gentlemen. Those are dreams. Goals are things that are specifically written down with action plans. Who? What will I do? When will I do it? How will I do it? And how can I evaluate it? That's a goal. So if you have clearly defined goals, go for them. Now's the time to think about that. Now's the time to think about how you are living your life, as I've just said. And I think one of the key things that we really struggle with in life overall, for all the right reasons, and I can see that some of my wonderful family from the Department of Education are on this line today. When I was working with you, I had no idea how stressful teaching is. You really opened my eyes and you taught me so much about your roles and what you do. In the teaching profession, you don't even have to be a teacher. You could be a teacher's aide, or you could be a leader or manager, which you are. It's stressful. I'm telling you, I would never do the role that you do, and I take my hat off to you and commend you and love you all. And one of the things I think we talked about when we were doing the program with you was good time management skills. Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, learn how to nail what you are doing and do one thing at a time. Because if you don't have good time management skills, what you do is you're running around, get me right, like a chook with no head. Have you ever seen a chook with no head? I remember as a child seeing this guy. He was, oh my gosh, a farmer, and he cut off a chook's head and it still ran around. It made me feel sick. But that's what I use. You run around like a chook with no head. You're so busy, so crisis-driven, and everything is so reactive, because it has to be that you get home at night exhausted and you wake up exhausted. How many of you on the line, tell me right now, wake up and go to bed exhausted? Just give me some answers here. How many of you wake up? Well, there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12 of you. 12 of you out of 25 generally go to bed and tired and wake up tired. Let's work out how we can work differently if we possibly can. And I'm so glad, Kath, that now not so much, but you used to. Just remember, if you stress and, because you don't have enough time, then you've got to maybe look at how you can do it better and more efficiently. Because if you're running around like a chook, you can't really have the resilience that you need. And I always say gratitude. Gratitude and humility. Thank God for everything you've got and just be humble. So many people out of there have lost their businesses, have lost their livelihoods, have lost their families, have lost everything. And I just wake up every morning with that gratitude of, thank you, God, I'm so grateful. So what does the resilient leader look like? First and foremost, they do not ignore their feelings and situations. They actually tune into what they feel. So very many times we're so busy we don't actually have the opportunity to understand how we feel about something, and we might get really angry or we might make bad decisions, and we wonder, how the hell did that happen? The best and most resilient leaders are able to say, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? What is that? Really interesting, quick discussion. One of my really, really close friends was talking to me last night about a problem that she's got at work, and so I actually took her to the process, etc., etc. And when I took her through the process of looking at what was really going on, we did the A4 paper, we drew it, A lot of it's her stuff, but there's a certain amount of stuff in this problem that belongs to her leader, which she hadn't actually seen, and belongs to the leader above that leader. And so she was feeling really upset about it. And when we talked it through, she now understood where it all came from. So we're going to draw up a strategy over the weekend that she can go back into the workplace and actually really start to address it. But she didn't ignore the feelings. She acknowledged that she was really upset. She didn't just say, oh, things will work out and things will pass. No, they don't always. I think it's about how you deal with them. Develop insight, and they learn how to work with their feelings. And they teach their people how to deal with emotions. There's always going to be emotions. If your people, for example, are very emotional in this time or emotion void in this time, talk to them about how they're feeling. Instead of what job are you doing and where's the latest report you owe me, which is certainly a question and a conversation that has to be had, get into the more feeling side of say, how are you feeling about all of this? And, how's this working out for you working from home? And how does it feel to work at home? So more of the feeling words and less of the thinking words. Because at the end of the day, the resilient leader believes that they are responsible for their successes and has a can-do attitude and teaches their people to do that as well. You are responsible for your successes just as much as you are responsible for your failures. But we don't focus on the failures, only we focus on the failures to learn from them and not do whatever we did again so that whatever we do becomes more successful. But what's often there is people don't actually have the time or the inclination to do this because they're too busy running around like chooks with no head. If you're running around like a chook with no head, remember, you're adding to your stress, which ultimately reduces your resilience. They reframe circumstances for themselves and their people in an optimistic way. Exactly what I've been talking about Corona now. Okay, we are where we are, so what can we do? Well, I had time to build a relationship with my wife back again. I haven't been getting along very well with her. She and I can go for walks. I can ring my team member and really ask them how they're feeling about it. I can learn, or I could spend more time in the social emotional slice, and I could actually build relationships. So you reframe circumstances and look at what do I need to do to actually feel as if I'm contributing to being more optimistic in the way that I work and the way that I connect with other people. You've got people who are in pain right now, and you will all have, because many people are in pain right now. But what I want you to do is when you've got one of them who's suffering, to look at it as a temporary setback. If you've got a temporary setback financially, or if you've got a temporary setback at work, just remember it's temporary. It will pass in time, as the coronavirus will. It's more around how can I work out solutions to this temporary problem in the meantime so that I can reduce the pain and the suffering and look at it as a more optimistic way so that I can move forward, as opposed to, as I said a few times today, feeling stuck in that pool of pain, that pool of despair. So start thinking about how you can do it and encouraging your people to do exactly the same. You motivate and support their people in times of stress and distress. Motivate says things, all the things I've been saying to you this morning, teach them the same things I've been teaching you. How can I recover? I'm going to send out, or MJ, my marketing person, will send the slides out to you later. Teach them. It'll be a recording. I think it's an audio or visual recording. Teach them what I'm teaching you. They foster friendships, intimate relationships, and support systems. Why? Because it comes back to a comment I made earlier, ladies and gentlemen. It is all about connection. And it's all about connection in everyday life. It's more important when we're not connected like now. So make more phone calls, do more Skypes, do more Zooms. Connect, because the better connected we are, as I've said earlier, the more we have people around us, the more we have people who we love, who support us, who believe in us, who are there, the more we believe in ourselves. The more we believe in ourselves, and the more we're able to manage our stress and live a more comfortable and secure and balanced life, we tend to be more resilient. See how everything buys into everything. You've got thinking, managing stress, and stress then managing resilience. So everything is intertwined, and it's all governed by health and the way that you look at life. The resilient leader perseveres along their road. They know that we're in for a tough time, but we're working on how we're going to help our teams to do the same, offering support. Here you go. As you said, Jane, everything's slower. Isn't that great? Takes time for themselves to take that breath, like and as I've said, look after themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. Again, calmness. Try and just be calm in the stress, in this very, very tough conversation that you might have with other people, and tough conversations you might have with your team. I think that people working from home, there's a lot of very great benefits from it, but I think we need to also acknowledge to ourselves, if you are in a leadership position, that it is more stressful. And it is more stressful because we can't actually see each other. 75% of communication actually is body language. We can't see the body language, really. Zoom helps and Skype helps, but it's not everything. So we lose a lot of ability to connect because we can't see what's going on. So that's a downside. Of course, the upside is not travel, etc. The downside is having kids at home. The upside is having kids at home. So that there's a lot of things that work for and against. But working, in teams or with people is all about connections. Now, these two, seriously, and I'm leaving politics aside. I'm not talking politics here. These two have to be modern-day examples of resilient leaders. I have never seen Barack Obama angry, upset, pissed off, reacting to things. Actually, that's not true. I did. There was one time on television where he was clearly distressed because ISIS had beheaded one of his journalists. But he was, I think that when he then walked away from the presidential position, my son said it all. Mum, the world just doesn't seem as safe without Obama. That's all I can say. You may or may not like Jacinda Ardern, but how she has led New Zealand through things like the whole massacre thing was absolutely flawless. She did the Christchurch massacre was absolutely flawless. She has to be, right now, I think, probably the best leader on the planet. And I guess I would know because I'm in this business of leadership. So what can we learn from COVID-19? I think that's important. What can you learn? What can you do better? What can you do differently? What is it that we can take away? So what can you do as a resilient leader? Okay. Number one, you must believe in a positive image of the future. You can't see this as Armageddon. Oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, how's the deal with the people and the goddamn toilet rolls in the supermarkets? What is that? What is that? I've taken photographs of a supermarket with absolutely not one toilet roll on it. It's disgraceful. What do these people think? That Armageddon's coming? You must see bad things that happen as temporary. We're going through a temporary thing here, nothing else. Don't let setbacks like Corona affect your whole life. Coronavirus obviously has major impacts on everybody, but it's not our whole life. We can work on other aspects of our lives right now that coronavirus does not affect. And what's an example? Relationships with our friends, with our family, with our loved ones, etc. Don't take what you don't succeed at personally. It's a tough time. There's some things you're not going to succeed at. But if you're going to not succeed at something, what I'm going to ask you to do is learn from it. What did you do that created the problem? How can I recover? What are you going to do to recover? Set and achieve your goals and have a burning desire to achieve them. How many times do people write, beginning of January, I'm going to go to the gym every, 1st of January, I've signed up. So they go there on the 1st of January. They pay their $800 or whatever it is for the month. They pumped for a whole 3.5 minutes, right? And then on the 15th of January, do you know what? Oh, no, I wasn't able to go today. And then by March, they're not going at all. And really, then what's the point of paying all the money and setting the goal? You've got to be committed to the goals and have a burning desire to achieve them. Never lose compassion. Never be so desensitized that you don't care about other people. And sometimes when we're tired or we're working in an industry that, we feel as if our compassion is actually seeping away, it's time to take a break or find a new career. Never think that you're a victim in any situation. You will never be a victim. Resilient leaders or resilient people do not think in a victim way. We never think like that. We only think that we are winners and how can we get out of the situation. So stand up tall and positively in front of your people. Encourage them to see life or a situation in a positive way. If you do have teams at home, They do still need to be working. They do still need to be productive. They do still need to be, producing outcomes. So that has to be happening. Those things have to be under control. And so as a leader, you've obviously got to make sure that those things are happening, because remember, for them, it's also a different world, but it's also about connecting in with them as to how they feel about things and how things are going for them at home and in the world. Because your role, if you're a servant leader, is to set the way and serve them, not the other way around. Your role is to help them and be there for them. So what I want you to do is go out and live the best life you can. We cannot do anything, just sit and wait for coronavirus to go away. There's nothing else we can do about coronavirus per se, except follow the rules, social distancing, social, etc., and just plan and use this time wisely to live well and do things well. So it's now, just obviously on time. That was well timed. Very, very happy I want to hear the biggest challenge you are facing as you deal with this particular virus. I want to know what's going on for you at work or at home. I want to know what you see as the most difficult thing that you have to deal with at the moment, and what you think is actually what you can do to recover, or what you can do to move forward. Please follow me on LinkedIn. There's my LinkedIn profile. I'm doing lots of blogs and posts about, everything. Business, leaders, women, relationships, everything. So please feel free to call me. There's my email address if you'd like a chat. It's absolutely obligation free. That's my email address, and I would love the opportunity to hear from you. So I don't want you to walk away from this particular webinar and then necessarily just join me on the next one. Talk to me about how you feel about this. Tell me what you think about resilience. Are you resilient? Where are you struggling? How are you managing to make sure that your team is resilient? What are you doing? So I just wanted to, essentially say all of that to you, and to say, let's chat when you are ready. Very happy to do so. And I'm really, really happy that I had the opportunity today to spend some time with you, and to spend some time giving you what I love to talk about, which is obviously my most favorite topic. So before we close off now, are there any questions that you would like to ask me? Please don't feel shy. You know how to do this. There's many of you on the line that I know today, so come on. Come on, Eva, ask me something. Just trying to see if I can actually work out the docking. I see some of you are from out of New South Wales. Some of you are actually from overseas. I'm being asked, are you going to share this information slides with us of life? If you would like me to, I certainly will, Nalika, with the greatest of pleasure. I'm just getting really lovely, lovely comments. Thank you so much for being here. All right, you know where I am. I look forward to hearing from you. Otherwise, if I don't, I will speak to you next week. God bless people. Be safe and take care. All the best.